Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. It's Gaming in the Keats here. I'm your host Chris, and Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all that jazz, etc. We've got a new year, new rules. Well, it's 3.0 rules, but they've done a whole bunch of updates, so we're getting into this friendly practice game of Dread Elves versus Saurian Ancients. I'll be playing Dread Elves because I'm still on the Dread Elf high right now and still trying to figure out how this army plays, especially with the updates and the new changes, and there are quite a lot. So I am practicing for an event. Spoiler alert, I will be using Dread Elves in this event in February at the beginning. Let's see if I am able to actually make it. I might have a schedule conflict there, so it's not 100% sure, but I might as well start practicing just in case. So anyways, let's get on to the lists. Okay, for my Dread Elves today, I am hearkening back to a list that I actually did pretty well in my last event in 2.0. So I think I got 4th place, 4th or 5th, I can't remember, in this 2-day event. And it was a list that had a chariot prince and a master of witchcraft. So no big death block of spears. I've switched over to temple militants with the divine altar in there. So we got the prince here. So we got a battle line hero. Now the changes to battle line hero are, this prince's courage is extended to 18 inches and it applies to all units. That's it. I don't need to be in front or flank or anything. It's just commanding presence is 18 inches. For 30 points on courage 10, that is awesome. So he's on a raptor chariot this time. And I realized when I built this guy, I totally forgot a shield. So maybe next time I'll try and fit in a shield. But he's got a basalt infusion. She's he, she, them. It is a giant demon after all. That I'll be using for the model. Good old Murthy. So basalt infusion. So the +1 to the armor save and Aegis 3 up against flaming. Great weapon with elven finesse. So now this is one of the new Dread Elf weapons, Height of Hubris. So I get to have hatred on a great weapon with multi-wounds 2 on the charge. So I'm trying this weapon out. This is definitely a character killer, hopefully. We got a 5-up Aegis with Talisman of Shielding, and just a cheeky potion of healing to give me effectively 5 wounds. Then we got a Master Warlock on Witchcraft. So I've taken Evil Eye, Illusory Paths, Cauldron's Curse, Mists of Invisibility, and Clouded Sight. So I'm trying out a lot more of control spells like Mist of Invisibility or Clouded Sight and Illusory Paths to kind of help mitigate shooting. It's really so the goal is to make my opponent have tough choices in terms of how they want to effectively use their ranged damage or advance forward, because quite frankly I'm still going to be advancing anyway. So I'm trying out these spells. Let's see if it works. I'm doing 24 Temple Militants with the Sheltering Standard because that still exists, and yeah, I'm going to take it. So effectively, they're going to have a 6-up, 6-up armor, 6-up Aegis against anything AP 3 or less. 2 units of 10 auxiliaries with flags, because flags is one of the Dread Elf secondaries, and that gives them scoring, so that's important. And a little bit of chaff clearing. We got dedicated chaff here, 5 Shadow Riders. Now, with the new change, I can take 4 Gorgons with Halberds, so this gives me a bit of AP in the list, because my magic, aside from the Hereditary, I don't really have AP. And the Dread Prince and the Hunting Chariots, but that's kind of spread out a bit. But yeah, the 4 Gorgons now, they're up to 4 attacks again, offense, defense 6, still agility 5, but that's okay. Still +1 to wound, so these guys are, that's pretty nasty. So that's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8 petrifying stare attacks, which just hits on 5s. So that's awesome. We have 9 Dread Acolytes, the combat ones with the Banner of Discipline. I've still been loving this unit. They're just fun. I have a soft spot in my heart for this unit right now. And then going down to effectively my BSB here, it's a unit of 15 Obsidian Guard with a Banner of Blood. So the Banner of Blood means that the unit can only be max size 15. The only characters that can join this unit are what is it called? The Captain. So I can only put captains in that unit. However, that unit gets Devastating Charge plus 1 attack, which is, on Obsidian Guard, I think is pretty awesome. But, I mean, we could do Judicators. There have been changes to Judicators, too. There have been some changes to Dancers of Yema. Dancers of Yema, of course, are great, great toolbox unit. But I'm really having the Obsidian Guard there because I want a Battle Standard Bearer effect from the unit, so it kind of gives me the best of both worlds. Then I'm doing the new Divine Altar of Yema, so this goes into the unit. I'm going to put it into the Temple Militants, and so this now does +1 mobility to all units within 12 inches of it, and then I get Devastating Charge Strider. So I'm trying this out. I want to see how useful it is. Now, granted, a lot of the maps, well, let's be real, there's only 6 of them right now, have a lot of ruins in the center, like the ancient ruins, and I actually feel like the Devastating Charge Strider is pretty nice for those big units. So I just don't have to take DTs, or if there's woods in the way, I'm not losing all my ranks for steady, etc. So, and then to round out my special, I just have 2 hunting chariots. This is, of course, for more board control and some high strength and AP shooting attacks. So, focusing down on single models. I do have a binding scroll on the list, and I also have Siren Scales, so I have the -1 resilience as a bound spell on the Sanctified Warlock Outcast. Going over my opponent's list, he's got the Anurok Archmage. So Master of Alchemy, which is, this is really great. He's got Invasive Mastery, which ironically never actually came up this game. He could have used that against me, and I don't think he got a chance to. We've got the Smokestone, which is awesome. So again, like all of my units that, when he pops it, 1 use only, all of my units within 18 inches have to roll minimized for their, they have to roll minimized for their pursuits, and I think their charges, it affects a lot of different things. I forgot exactly what it is, but that is an awesome item. He also gets to use the Ancient Plaque, so he gets to reroll, a casting attempt. He's got a pretty hefty Skink Veteran on a Taurosaur with the Magnetic Great Bow, Serpent's Nest Charm. So this model puts out just a lot of attacks with poison. So, that model is just there to kind of control a flank. We've got a Tegu Veteran. This is interesting. With Glory of the Dawn Age, so Lethal Strike does multi-wounds 2, and he has Imbued Jade, so it has channel. He gives an extra channel, I think, and gives the unit a 5-up Fortitude. We've got 8 Cayman Warriors with Tooth and Claw, 22 Tegu Warriors with Spears, and Awaken the Beast. We got some Skink Hunters with Javelins to just start, pew-pewing me. We've got 20 Tegu Mystics, with Molten Copper and Whispers of the Veil, and a Rending Banner. So that's pretty interesting there. Tegu Mystics, still light troops. That's still a unit that puts out a lot of attacks, and they're distracting, which is frustrating. So the Tegu Veteran will go there, which I think is pretty cool, and makes that unit surprisingly killy. Then also surprisingly resilient when you add all the magic bonuses to that unit. Then you got 16 Tegu Guard with the Core Stone, so that's like the BSB effect there. We got a Thorascutus Herd that will go into the big unit of Tegu Warriors with another Magnetic Great Bow, and then 2 Weapons Beasts. I think Weapons Beasts now are pretty spicy, because I think each one has 4 shots, so that's 8 shots, Strength 5, AP 2. They're quick to fire, and they do get Stand and Shoot, which is rough. So let's see how I can deal with that. Alright, so we're on the Clearwater Springs map. We have the diagonal refused flank. The primary is hidden agenda, so that means our secondaries become the primary objective. So for me, it's capture the flags, which means I need to have more flags on the field by the end of the game than my opponent. So I have 5 to start with, and then my opponent only has 4, so already I'm at an advantage. And then my opponent's, unfortunately, this is actually really tough for Saurian Ancients. My opponent's is forbid trespass, I think. And so when you combo that with refused flank with the diagonal, my opponent's options for picking the terrain feature to stop me from plundering is just really, really difficult, to achieve. So already, I have the advantage on the primary, in this matchup. Okay, so on the matchup analysis here, the macro, I'm sitting there thinking, I definitely want to be going first. I want to take board control. I want to be using the witchcraft spells to start messing with my opponent's range damage, because, that's just really, really important. Because I have advantage on the primary, I don't need to be aggressive as much. I really have to force my opponent to kind of make poor choices and just take board position. I don't have to press, in my opinion, really until game turns 3, 4, and 5. Then it becomes a bit more of an issue. But anyway, I think my opponent's range damage, it does edge me out. I think my opponent has better range damage here. We both have kind of roughly the same distance in terms of our attacks, but my opponent just has more, like the magnetic great bows. You got the alchemy spells, and you have the poison javelin shooting. You have the poison shooting from the Taurosaur as well. So there's, my opponent just has a bit more shooting than I do. And then my opponent, of course, has a much stronger magic phase, and really, if I'm going to be going into combat, I need to be forcing those combats on multiple fronts so that my opponent has to spread their magic instead of focus it onto one unit, because I really can't. I can only kind of stop 1, maybe 2 spells. So it's just going to be tough, I think. So my goal here is to use my speed and collapse the flanks. That's kind of my overarching goal here, because I have faster units on my flanks than my opponent does, or at least I intend to do that. In terms of the micro situation, my opponent's only, the Dread Prince is an issue for him because of the multi-wounds too, and you have the Cayman Warriors, you have the Taurosaur, you have those characters that he can just single out and just kill. My opponent, and I do have that Flaming Aegis, so his alchemy isn't going to hopefully do that much as he would like. So the magnetic great bows are sort of the answer for my opponent, as long as I just don't charge forward into spears, and just let my opponent just stick and then he countercharge. So it's really, the Prince is the main issue for my opponent, I think, and the Gorgons, quite honestly. Witchcraft, I think, is also going to be interesting to, again, force my opponent into some poor decisions. And then Spearbacks and the Skink Veteran are going to be my 2 big priority targets because of their shooting and, the shooting combined with, the combat power of the Skink Veteran. Okay, so I lost the roll to choose sides, so my opponent chose to be the defender, and he chose sides, and he was really put in this tough position again with the primary, because either way you sliced it, it just was difficult to defend the forbid and trespass. So ultimately my opponent chose the top side and chose the hill as the point at which to prevent me from keeping a unit on at the start of any of my turns 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think. 3 onwards. So I think this is just a really challenging primary to do. I do apologize, I don't have a picture of deployment. What you're seeing here is already my turn 1. So let's just go over briefly. From left to right, I have a hunting chariot on the far side. We have my Gorgons. You see them, I've already reformed and pushed up. We have a unit of auxiliaries with my Witchcraft Master. I definitely want her in range of the Torsaur. We have my big unit of militants with the altar. We have my Chariot Prince just giving that nice 18-inch bubble of Courage 10 right in the middle. We have the Obsidian Guard giving their BSB effect. And we have another unit of auxiliaries and my Hunting Chariot. And then on the far, far side, around this impassable, we have my Dread Acolytes. So my opponent's counter deployment, we have the Spearbacks, we have the Javelins here, we have the Spears with the Thorascutus, we have the Corstone Temple Guard with the Anararch, we have the 8 Caimans, we have the Mystics right here with the Skink Veteran, or not Skink Veteran, excuse me, the Saurus Veteran, and then we have the Torsaur off on the far left, my left. So, I dropped for first because I wanted to take board position, and then my opponent counter-deployed as such. So I vanguarded already, and then just blocked up these 2 units here. Now, my opponent does wisely make it so the Chariot cannot quite see. Well, he's going to reform here so that the Chariot won't be able to see the Caimans. So unfortunately, the Chariot's threat range will start becoming only on this left side unless I do something about that. Already taking advantage of the mobility, so +1 mobility is moving everything up just a little bit closer. What I do here is I put the Torsaur right outside of 12 here, and then I basically force my opponent to make a decision. You either get random movement on the Torsaur, or you get you cannot target a unit within that's outside of 12 inches. And so my opponent let the Clouded Sight go off and stop the random movement. And then I'm also able to sneak through a bound spell of the -1 resilience onto the Torsaur as well. Shooting, I do 2 wounds to the Torsaur with the Hunting Chariot. It's either 2 or 1. It might only be 1. And no, you know what? I do not, but I do hit it. I don't do any wounds, ironically. My opponent makes a save there. But then I do kill one of the Spearbacks with the Chariot, and unfortunately, these models here do not kill the remaining Spearback. So you'll see what my opponent decides to do next. Okay, my opponent's turn. My opponent charges the Caimans here into the chaff. You can make an argument that I probably I don't know. I probably activated it too early, but what I didn't want was the Caimans charging my Obsidian Guard. So I wanted to advance forward with all of my units here. That was my reasoning there. So my opponent gets rid of them. Is going to attempt to moves the Mystics around with their light troops. Just kind of angles out this way so the Chariot can't get out of line of sight from the Torsaur, which you'll see might come back to bite my opponent. But you can see these little markers here. You have my Evocation Bound Spell marker up, and then the Clouded Sight marker up, so that the Torsaur can't see anything within that outside of 12 inches of it. So that actually really helped me in terms of not receiving a charge from it. So I'm already starting to like Witchcraft a lot, or at least that spell, I should say. Oh, and then here's something cheeky you'll notice. My opponent decides to charge his remaining Spearback into my Hunting Chariot. And I decided to take it. I was like banking on like him. He only has 3 attacks. Like, he's hitting me on 4s, wounding me on 3s. I get a 6-up save. I was kind of banking on like the courage from the general, like, kicking into effect here and sticking. So you'll see how that goes. That was my reasoning there. Oh yeah, and when I moved my Acolytes in this way, I prevented my opponent from being able to get outside of my line of sight here with the Acolytes, so there was really no reason for me to push the Chariot forward. I really could have just stayed within 18 inches of that unit and not had to worry about it, you know? So that was kind of pointless. But anyway, in my opponent's magic phase, I let go +1 to hit on the skinks. I stop Awaken the Beast on the skinks, and then my opponent fails twice his hereditary spell. So he exchanged one of his spells for he exchanged one of his molten coppers for the hereditary. And I think so he failed the fortitude on the Taurosaur twice. Or no, on the sorry, not on the Taurosaur, on the Mystics and the Caimans twice. So in shooting, he does put a wound with a magnetic great bow onto the chariot, and he does put 3 wounds onto my hunting chariot, and thankfully my chariot passed the panic check. I was a little nervous about that one. So chariot passed panic check here, and then my opponent easily wipes out this unit of Shadow Riders, and you'll see, and he can reform the Caimans so that my Chariot Prince can't physically see them, nor can this altar unit, because he's using the hill to his advantage on that reform. So over here, this damn Spearback freaking hits all 3 times, wounds twice, I fail both my saves. I don't wound him back, so he has a charge and 2 wounds, a 10 goes down to a 7, and I fail my break check, and on Swift Stride, and to his not Swift Stride, he runs me down. So, I just threw away that hunting chariot. So, good job on that Spearback. Yep. And then other news for shooting, the skinks kill 1 acolyte, so not even enough to make a panic. So, I see an opportunity here. I charge the Gorgons. You saw I reformed them. Well, I had put them in 3x2. So, I charge the Gorgons into his Taurosaur, and I saw a nice overrun into his flank here if I happen to either kill the Taurosaur or break it, and I'm hoping to do either of those things. Hunting Chariot moves back. I'm not going to make that same mistake with the Hunting Chariot in case things go wrong, so I'm just going to line up to take shots onto the Mystics. This unit is within 18 inches of the Taurosaur. I don't think they needed to be at this rate. So, I don't know. But I'm outside of charge range, of course, of everything. In my opponent's movement phase, of course, I forgot to mention, he did back out outside of my charge range from the Obsidian Guard and the Militants. The Chariot could have, of course, charged, but I just would have been sticking myself there and then opening myself up to a counter charge, so no bueno there. So let's see, in my, oh yes, and then of course I charge the skinks. They do have a stand and shoot, but I don't care. Like, I'm just going to take it and then just hopefully nuke the unit and try and overrun towards my opponent's flanks on this side. And then of course I reformed the auxiliaries, because this little guy is pissing me off and I want to kill him. In the magic phase, I am able to get off the hereditary, like the -1 resilience, up on the Taurosaur, but my opponent does stop the -1 AP, +1 AP for me. So those, because I drew the 4 phase this time, so I really could only cast like 2 spells. So at least I got 1 debuff up, which was helpful. And shooting, I kill a couple of Tegu Mystics with the Chariot and the auxiliaries, and then I only put 1 wound on this little asshole, so he's getting there. And this was nuts. Okay, so I charge in, I do a wound with my Petrifying Stare, and then I do 3 wounds with the Gorgons. These are the wounds that got through now, because my opponent actually rolled, I think I got a total of 7 wounds with the Gorgons, and then my opponent rolled, my opponent rolled some really excellent saves here. So it didn't die, but it did break from the combat res. He did kill 1 in return, but he broke. He rolled a 7, which meant he was not off the board, but then I failed to catch him, but still put me into the flank of the Mystics. So I'm like, that's weird. So this guy's probably going to rally next turn. I'm into the flank of the Mystics, and now I'm just like hoping that the Gorgons do enough into the Mystics to like auto break them, hopefully, because they're light troops and the Gorgons are not. So that's, I think, going to be really helpful, hopefully. I just need to make sure I just stop the magic that goes onto this unit. So that was a thing that happened. Okay, on to my opponent's turn 2. Yes, as you can see, the Acolytes, the stand and shoot killed 2 more, but then the Acolytes just like absolutely nuked that skink unit, and I chose to overran. So, yes, my opponent just backed up to make sure I'm in the front. He's backing up outside of charge ranges. He's not going to go on top of that hill, because the moment that happens, that's just going to be militants and a chariot prince right in his face. And here's where this was pretty critical. In the magic phase, I chose to binding his, because I have a binding spell, I chose to binding his hereditary, so he couldn't make these guys a frickin' 3-up fortitude save. So I binding that, and then I stop Word of Iron. So anything else, he basically got, my opponent was able to get +1 to hit, Savage Fury, and Awaken the Beasts, but I didn't care about any of those spells. I really just had to stop any of his defensive spells here. And then the Torsaur in his phase did rally. Shooting, yeah, I think shooting I used my healing potion in my previous turn, so then shooting, I think he put that wound back onto the Chariot Prince again from the Magnetic Great Bow. So healing potion already paying for itself. And yeah, the Gorgons just went to town on that, on the Tegu Mystics. Again, the restricted attacks, because they have 3 going down to 1, because they're height 1, you know, he had all these buffs up on the unit, but he still only had like 3 attacks. It didn't really matter. And so the Gorgons just like did a whole bunch of wounds. They still have, I think now 4 attacks each, so 4 attacks, and then you have the Petrifying Stares. Like, it just was too much. I auto-broke him and ran the unit down, and ran this way here. And so now I have a really nice flank charge onto those Cayman Warriors. And if my opponent flees, he's going to be off the board. So he's just going to have to hope for those Cayman Warriors to stick. Alright, so I, of course, charged the flank of the Cayman Warriors, and this time it's the top of my 3, so I put my toe up with the militants onto the hill, so on my next turn I count as plundering the unit, if the militants are still there, of course. I moved the obsidian, I just shuffled the obsidian guard over to make sure that all my units are within the bubble reroll range. I moved the chariot over because it is light troops over this way. And that +1 mobility as well is just really helpful. So I'm zoning this Torsaur if he wants to come after my wizard bunker, because the chariot guy is exactly designed to kill this model right here. So I'm using the chariot prince to zone that Torsaur. We're making sure within 18 inches of the Caymans. So shooting, I don't do any wounds to this guy because he's in a field, and it's really annoying. And I put another 1, I think I put 2 wounds onto this guy with this hunting chariot again. So this hunting chariot is just like paying dividends for itself right now. In the magic phase, I hex my opponent stops the -1 resilience, I think, like the bound spell, but then I get through the curse, the hereditary spell. So I am effectively taking away the Cayman's armor. And yeah, it was just too much. Like even with Tooth and Claw up with the Caymans, and they still got 6 attacks back, but like they were not able to do the final, like they were not able to do enough wounds. There are wound markers on here. I think there are 2 wounds on this last one, and they were not able to kill that final Gorgon to make sure that they had a rank and I did not. So my rank actually took away their steady, and so they auto broke with all the wounds that I did to the unit again. And this time my opponent does pop the Koro Stone, but it didn't matter. So because I got to see my opponent's roll, and he rolled like snake eyes, I think. So I chose to flee, and then I ended up rolling a 9 to get into the flank of those Temple Guard. So these Gorgons are just rolling up that right side. It is looking pretty bleak for my opponent. So on my opponent's turn, he moves the spear back here, trying to cause a panic check on these auxiliaries. My opponent's going to try and shoot the final wound off on this hunting chariot here from the Taurosaur, and he turns to face the acolytes because you do not want acolytes in your flank. And he is outside of charge range here from the Obsidian Guard. So maybe it's something where I could have just been a bit more aggressive with the Obsidian Guard, making sure I had like an option to charge him. So that was the situation there. In the magic phase, I do not stop Word of Iron this time. My opponent forces through Word of Iron, and I just let him have it, and this time I stop the Fortitude save. So this unit right now has a 1-up armor save. So even though I'm in their flank, let's see if I can do any wounds with the Gorgons. I do have those petrifying stares, but let's see what I can do here. Shooting, my opponent fails to do the final wound on the hunting chariot. So again, I get off super lucky. My opponent's dice were just starting to abandon him pretty hard at this rate. And I do kill a couple of models. My opponent does do a wound back, a wound or two back, but he's bodyguard, it doesn't matter, so he just turns to reform them. And there you have it. The Temple Guard are kind of stuck, so now there's this big null zone where now I can start pushing aggressively, and I've already gotten the primary, so it's looking, again, like I have the game sealed pretty handedly at this point. Okay, so we have my charge now. I charge the militants into the flank of his Temple Guard. I needed a 4, and I rolled it. So, the dice are coming up for me. There was a 50-50 chance to get it, and yeah, I got what I needed there. So I hit the flank of his Temple Guard. Granted, he's still going to be bodyguard, but at least this way, I'm just starting to grind. I'm starting the grinding process now with the Temple Guard, and he's surrounded at least. So now I just have, he can't like reform into the militants unless he kills this entire Gorgon unit. I put my toe up on the hill for the general. So I'm facing the Temple Guard, but also trying to, again, keep that Taurosaur honest. My chariot doesn't really need to move, so I'm just going to try and see if I can plank that last wound off on the Taurosaur there. This unit moves up outside of 16 inches from the Taurosaur, like I'm just outside of 16, but moving up to be within like spell range here. The Obsidian Guard move up, and they basically say, I pull the Acolytes back. Now, because of the new March rules, I can only go 9 inches, because I'm light troops and he's not, because he has a proper rank. So I can only go 9 inches, but I basically pull back and say, like, okay, and I make it so the angle is he's just going to go straight this way if he tries to pursue me and charge me. So I'm basically saying, if you do that, you're going to get flank charged by the Obsidian Guard. So that's a way to essentially save this unit's points here. Into shooting, I do indeed take off the final wound on the Taurosaur. So the Taurosaur does go down to the hunting chariot. Good job, hunting chariot. And then in this little battle here, I do put another wound onto this spearback with 4 auxiliaries. They've been passing their panic checks and have been losing models left and right. So there's only 4 of them left, but they've been, like I said, passing their panic checks with their courage 10 from this general 18 inches, which is awesome. I just love that right now. And as you see it, he still has Word of Iron up, but I do get in the magic phase, I do get both my hereditary up and I get the balance spell. So now I have +1 AP against him, and I am lowering his resilience, so at least now the Gorgons are wounding him on 2s anyway. So I do kill off quite a few models. Again, now with this new Yema, I also have an additional set of petrifying stairs coming in too. So I kill off quite a few. He loses combat, but he's bodyguard, and he's still with the Koro Stone. He sticks around for now. So in the final rounds of Saurian turn 4, I should say, he reforms his Saurus warriors to look at the flank of my temple militants. It's kind of a lost cause here because now it's my turn to charge, and he's giving me a flank with the acolytes. So this is essentially as far back as my opponent can go. I've already gotten the primary. He does move the spear back around to try and get these last bit of auxiliaries here. And yeah, my opponent at this rate is grasping for straws. In his magic phase, he does get off the fortitude save onto this unit, but I stop Word of Iron. So that is indeed something. My opponent does kill 2 more auxiliaries, and again, the unit passes their panic. So the spearback in the auxiliary fight continues. And I don't have a picture of the combat, I'm so sorry, but I do end up killing off the Temple Guard to a model, and the Anarch auto breaks. I pursue with both units, and so then basically my opponent's like, alright, I'm surrounded on all fronts. What unit are you charging with? And so I charge with the militants first, and my opponent just decides to flee. So that way I simply reform everything else to come face this final spearback, and let's see if I can kill it with shooting. And I'm going to open up with shooting with these 4 shots from these 2 final models who've been battling out with the spearback. And the spearback goes down, and you can even see I got my hereditary off and the evocation spell off. My opponent just failed to stop those spells. So, yeah, that was just, again, bad luck on my opponent's side, and oof, that is the end of the game. Wow. So that was a 20-0 victory for the Dread Elves. Yeah, great game to my opponent. He was a fantastic sport about the situation. It definitely started going downhill once the Gorgons started steamrolling each unit, and yeah, but my opponent pressed on and was a great sport about it. So thank you, Mike, so much for the game. In terms of stuff on my end, like the macro, let's see. Again, I'm getting used to the new updates and changes of different units and rules and what they do. I say the devil's in the details because an example of this is when I was playing the game, I thought with Battleline Hero, it still only applied to scoring units, and they had to be in my flank. So when I was moving the chariot around in the game, I had that in mind, and then my opponent points out to me that, like, no, it's just a flat 18 inches. And I was like, oh my god, wow. So I've been liking the witchcraft magic setup so far, having those different options to kind of mitigate my opponent's range. At least with this type of list that I brought with Dread Elves, like it kind of helps plug that weakness just a little bit. I like having more options to kind of control the board, which is nice, like doing the movement spells, and then you combo that with taking away an opponent's swift stride with the chariots, and then having the +1 mobility to move forward on everything within 12 of the altar. It's actually pretty nice. The list, I think, might struggle with some heavy armor. I mean, that's what the Gorgons are for, and the chariots, but we'll see. And then I do think my opponent pointed out to me that he actually made a pretty big macro mistake, and he said that he should have just chosen to gone first, like give me the role to pick sides, and should have gone first, knowing that the primary was kind of already futile, and so that would have given him the option to move up and then put pressure on me and start doing a lot more range damage on me turn 1. So I think I agree with my opponent there. In the micro things, yeah, I think you could make the argument that I threw away my chaff too early, but at the same time, it did kind of block up his movement on that left side, which I really liked, and it still allowed me to advance without too much issue. So I don't know. But then, like, you know, giving my opponent the chariot charge where he could charge his spear back into my chariot, that was, I don't know. Like, I just didn't need to do that. I think my opponent then took advantage of the hill very well in blocking its line of sight, because it really, the way that I deployed the chariot, it really negated the chariot prince's threat. So I thought that was very well played to my opponent there. And then I think, but the thing that really was the crux was the tipping the Taurosaur in a way that allowed the Gorgons to hit the flank of the Mystics, and that kind of allowed the domino effect of the Gorgons to just like dominate that left side. And then again, that key moment was just knowing to use the binding scroll, like, because I don't even remember the last time I've even taken a binding scroll, to be honest. But then like using it on the hereditary, so he couldn't stack the fortitude saves, because my list actually doesn't have anything to deal with fortitude. So that was a good micro moment, I would say, on my part. Alright, everyone, thank you so much for making it this far. Like and subscribe by all means, especially if you like the new layout. I'm just trying out I'm being like ADHD with the layout of my PowerPoints here, so I'm trying out new things. Let's see if I stick with it. I don't know. I'm probably going to stick with this layout for a while, just to keep things consistent. So, yeah, but yeah, let me know if you like it in the comments. Let me know if you like the report, and yeah, looking forward to making more and more reports in the new coming rules of 3.0. Thanks, everyone. Ciao, ciao for now, y'all.